We are a voluntary regulator, which means that nobody needs to join our association. They join if they want to. As a condition of joining, they sign up to a code of conduct and they submit themselves to our process for handling complaints. And they accept the fact that if we find that they haven't lived up to the expectations set out in our code of conduct, then we will expel them. Exactly what the effect of being expelled by a voluntary regulator is debatable. We don't issue and revoke licenses to practice, as is the case in regulated professions. So it's certainly not a career-ending thing. And I think the issue I would like to touch on briefly this morning is one way of thinking about it is the gap between public perception of professionalism and what can be done about professionals who aren't meeting the grade, and the reality of what organisations like mine are able to do. I mean, I think the public expects quite naturally that if they want to call somebody to account, that there is an organisation that will do it, will act on their behalf or hear that matter. My experience of dealing with public, both in my current role and in previous roles, is that overwhelmingly people find the experience of trying to bring a complaint, and the most common outcome actually of a complaint is that the complainant just gives up. It's deeply unsatisfactory. So I want to talk about why that is and what the consequences are and what we want to do about it. And this is, in terms of kind of fine tuning, this is perhaps not so much a fine tune, it's a fundamental going back to first principles about what does it mean to be a professional, and what is the social contract between the professional and society, and how effective is the professional body at mediating between the professional and society, if it's possible that the professional is not meeting society's expectation. So if you think about trust in institutions, I mean, pretty much everything we've heard for the last 20 years is that public trust in fill in the blanks is declining. There are not many things where public trust has risen over the last couple of decades. Public trust in professionals isn't generally particularly high. It is very high for nursing, and it's almost as high for doctors, but nurses, I think, consistently come out at the top. Journalists, I think, come out at the bottom. Most of the others, management consultants, lawyers, and so forth, bump along somewhere in the middle. But generally, the public don't, when asked, don't appear to have a great deal of trust in them. Now, what we say to the public is, look, we have a code of conduct. We make sure that our members, have proper qualifications when they join, and we've got this complaints process. So if you feel that one of our members has done the wrong thing, you can bring it to us, and we'll hear that. But the question is that whole mechanism really fit for purpose? So I imagine many people who are listening this morning will have bought or sold a house. In my entire life, I don't believe I've ever met anybody who found the experience of dealing with lawyers for conveyancing a pleasant one. Mostly, I think people have been open-mouthed at the delay, the sort of omissions, the sheer frustration of trying to do what must be a kind of fairly commonplace, fairly straightforward transaction. I wonder how many people have had that experience themselves, and I wonder if anybody's actually raised a complaint about a lawyer arising from that. I did personally, only with their employer, and it was resolved satisfactorily. That's just one example, fairly low level but widespread. An example of a much more extreme and thankfully unusual case is Grenfell Tower, where the full story has yet to emerge. But it's clear that there was a whole chain of events stretching over years, which began certainly with false claims being made about some building products, and just dozens and dozens of people from, professional planners, professional architects, building services engineers, all sorts of people who had the responsibility to protect the public, did their little bit of the work, and the sum total of their work was that materials which were not fit for purpose were put on a building, and 70 odd people died. And if you listen to the testimony of the professionals who've given evidence so far, on the whole, it's not very edifying stuff. So the question which I'm thinking about for the CIPR, and which I'm discussing with other professional bodies, is the social contract between the professions and society where we want it to be? Is it healthy and sound? Does it need to be revitalised? And what role do we as professional bodies play in that? And what that really focuses in on is our complaints process. Is our complaints process fit for purpose? If it's going to take 6 months and be utterly exhausting for a complainant to bring, a relatively low-level matter such that most people just don't even bother bringing it, and if the only outcome is that somebody is expelled from membership of a voluntary regulator and just carries on doing what they were doing anyway, are we really adding much value to society? So I don't have very positive answers to those questions at the moment. I am pleased to say that this sort of range of questions is something that many professional bodies are asking themselves. And I've mentioned law here, and I've mentioned some of the built environment professions. I don't mean to single them out at all. There are right across the board professional bodies are asking these questions. If we've got 24-hour news cycle and social media exploding in a matter of minutes over one breaking story after another, the whole way that we go about trying to deal with these sort of high risk, high profile issues just seems to belong in the Victorian age. It's just not fit for purpose. So I don't have any answers at all. Those are the questions that I'm thinking about at the moment, and having some very interesting discussions with other professional bodies about these matters.